I'm back. Does this mean that I'm going to be posting videos more regularly now? I don't know. It turns out that there's this whole fascinating and marvelous thing outside of YouTube called real life that's been occupying my attention. And hey, if you're not watching my videos because you're running around outdoors or hanging out with friends or practicing the piano, well then more power to you. But as long as you're here we are, another year, another batch of great music entering the public domain. A quick refresher on when copyright expires. Most countries do it by time elapsed from date of composer's death, either 50 or 70 years. In the US, we do it by time elapsed from date of first publication, 96 years to be precise. And just to be clear, a composition and a recording of a composition are separate works. So if a composition is public domain, recordings of that composition are probably under copyright unless they were done 96 years ago. So you might ask, what does it mean, practically speaking, for me as a performing artist if something is under copyright? Well, standard disclaimer, I am not a lawyer, this is not legal advice, but if you want to play something that is under copyright in the privacy of your own home, I think you're not going to run into any problems. If you want to perform it, well, I don't know how it is in other countries. Here, at least, it's pretty common that it's the performing venue and not the performing artist that pays the licensing fee. So you will want to check with your venue whether they're okay with your playing something under copyright. I think most venues do tend to pay a blanket licensing fee to ASCAP or BMI just to cover anything that might be performed there. But if you want to post something on YouTube, here's where it gets interesting, because so many people post recordings of copyrighted music that at some point the record labels realized it was more in their interest to just leave this stuff up but claim the ad revenue. And so this is what's going to happen 99.999% of the time. If you post, for example, your own cover of the Star Wars music, you'll get a notice saying, these entities have claimed this video, but they're going to let you leave it up as long as they get the ad revenue. Now, of course, the automated song ID system generates a ton of false positives, and there are a lot of goofy horror stories out there about somebody's recording of a public domain piece getting claimed as somebody else's recording. Even two-set violin got hit by this recently, and last I heard, the claim had been lifted, but they still haven't gotten back all the ad revenue that was falsely claimed by the other entity. But if you want to just post a recording of something on YouTube and you don't care where the money is going, then chances are pretty good that the powers that be will let you get away with it. However, this video is for those of you who wish to stay strictly within the letter and the spirit of copyright law. So let's see what's up for grabs this year. And I think, hands down, the big news of this year is George Gershwin Piano Concerto in F. Gershwin wrote this concerto 3 years after Rhapsody in Blue, and it's really interesting to see how he developed as a composer. For example, at the time of Rhapsody in Blue, he didn't know how to write for large ensembles, so it was actually orchestrated by Ferdi Grofé, who was Paul Whiteman's regular orchestrator. And Grofé's arrangement, which is how most people know Rhapsody in Blue, is still under copyright. However, 3 years later, Gershwin knew how to write for orchestra, so he orchestrated the concerto himself. Quite aside from that, however, the concerto displays a much greater command of musical architecture and thematic development from beginning to end. And maybe that would be a good topic for another video. But nevertheless, it is funny to observe the overlap between the two pieces. For example, Rhapsody in Blue has this famous love theme in E major. The Concerto in F has two love themes in E major. It's like this was his favorite key for love themes. There's this one from the first movement. And this one from the second movement. And there are a lot of syncopated figures that occur in both pieces. For example, this one. However, there are also a lot of really wonderful moments that don't really have any parallel in Rhapsody in Blue. For example, this stride theme, as they call it, from the second movement. All in all, I have to say this is the big catch of 2023, the Gershwin Concerto. But also, in Gershwin news, we've got his 3 preludes. That's number 1, this is number 2. And of course, number 3. Sorry, Gershwin Estate, this music now belongs to the people. Okay, moving on. Who else is on the list this year? Bartók. Béla Bartók. The second most famous Hungarian composer ever after Franz Liszt. His piano sonata is now in the public domain here. This is how it begins. It's kind of a brutal piece, almost Stravinsky-ish. The beginning of the third movement is somewhat more singable. Bartók's first piano concerto is also entering the public domain here this year. I wasn't sure what would be a good representative passage that would be satisfactorily renderable on a single piano. So for that piece, I'm just going to say, if you're curious, go search around here on YouTube for recordings of it. Let's see, what else have we got this year? Maurice Ravel, Second Violin Sonata. This is the sonata that's famous for having a middle movement titled Blues. we're really seeing the influence of the Jazz Age this year. First Gershwin and now this. Think of this as jazz as understood by a late French impressionist. I'm going to try to play both the violin and the piano part at once. At the end of this movement, the violinist strums away furiously at the violin like it was a guitar or a banjo, often so long and hard that they have to retune for the next movement. What else have we got? We have 4 poems by Leopold Godowsky, better known as one of the greatest pianists of the 20th century, but he also composed a little bit. And I'm going to play you the first of the 4 poems all the way through because it's so short. This one is titled Devotion. There's a lot of other great music on the list this year. You can go to IMSLP and search for anything published in 1927 and see for yourself. But before I end this video, I want to highlight one other composer that probably most of you won't have heard of, Mario Castelnuovo-Tedesco. So this guy was an Italian Jewish composer who fled to the States shortly before World War II and ended up composing for Hollywood, although most of the films that he worked on are pretty much forgotten nowadays. He also wrote quite a bit for classical guitar, and this is the body of his work that is probably best remembered nowadays. However, his real influence was as a teacher of composition. This guy tutored John Williams, Henry Mancini, Jerry Goldsmith, and a whole host of other familiar names from Hollywood. And if you listen to his orchestral music, you might hear how he influenced that generation. So I'm going to play you a bit from a piano suite of his titled Tre Poemi Campestri, which according to Google Translate is 3 country poems. This is still under copyright in Europe, however, it just became public domain here in the US. So here's the beginning 4 pages or so. And if any of that piques your curiosity, well, go search for recordings of these pieces, or better yet, download the scores from IMSLP and try playing through them yourself. So that is Public Domain Review for 2023. Until whenever next time is, I'm Ben, signing off.